Hey guys, and thanks for stopping on in for today's video where I'm going to be taking a look at 5 national polls for the 2020 Democratic primary. Earlier in the week, I made an entire video dedicated to that Monmouth poll where it was the first national 2020 Democratic primary poll where Joe Biden was actually in third place behind both Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. But since that result came out from Monmouth, we've had a number of other national polls come out that are telling a bit of a different story where Joe Biden still has that first place edge. So I'm going to go through these 5 polls, and if you're interested in looking at all of the data from these results for yourself, I'll have links to them posted down in the video description. So first, I'm going to start with this week's morning consult numbers, and Joe Biden rebounding, picking up those 2 points that he had lost the week prior, back up to 33% support in first place, followed by Bernie Sanders at 20%, Elizabeth Warren at 15%. Kamala Harris takes another slight step back down to 8% support, Pete Buttigieg at 5%, Cory Booker and Beto O'Rourke each at 3%, Andrew Yang at 2%, and then every other candidate is at 1 percentage point or less. When we take a look at those early states, and again, Joe Biden doing very well for himself, and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren somewhat similar to those overall national numbers, and we see them in second and third place respectively. The outlier that we get in these early primary states is Tom Steyer at 6% support, and I am assuming that he's pumping a lot of advertisements into these early states, and I don't like the idea that if you're a wealthy individual that can buy your way into relevancy, that it's really not the greatest situation for a democracy, but that's what Tom Steyer is doing. He's a very wealthy individual. He has the means to go ahead and put a lot of ads into these early primary states, and you can see that it is effective to some extent where he's in 5th place at 6% support. Now, moving on from the morning consult into our next poll, this one just coming out from Quinnipiac, and they asked who would be your first choice of the Democratic primary, were held today. Another relatively strong poll here from Joe Biden at 32% support, followed by Elizabeth Warren in second place at 19%, Bernie Sanders at 15%, Kamala Harris at 7%, Pete Buttigieg at 5%. And what's really positive for the Democrats about this Quinnipiac poll is when we go ahead and take a look at the head-to-head matchups between some of these upper-tier Democratic hopefuls and Donald Trump. They're all doing quite well. So we see Bernie Sanders, a 14-point lead over Trump, Elizabeth Warren, a 12-point lead, Kamala Harris, an 11-point lead, Pete Buttigieg, a 9-point lead, and then also former Vice President Joe Biden, 54% to Trump's 38%. So he has a 16-point lead over Trump. All very positive news for these upper-tier 2020 Democratic hopefuls in their head-to-head matchup against Donald Trump in this Quinnipiac poll. Now moving over and taking a look at the Economist YouGov, and we see Joe Biden not quite as strong in this one, but this is also one of those polls where they give you not sure as an option, which comes in at 12%. That's why in these results where they allow you to have a not sure option, who's ever in first place is going to be a little bit lower than the polls where you have to pick someone. Now we see Joe Biden in first place at 24%, followed relatively closely here by Elizabeth Warren at 20% support, Bernie Sanders in third place at 14%, Kamala Harris at 8%, Pete Buttigieg at 5%, and you see how the rest of the numbers come in with this Economist YouGov poll. And I just have 2 more polls that I want to touch on to finish this video out, taking a look at Emerson, and a little bit different from the prior Economist poll that we were seeing where Sanders and Warren flip places here. Sanders in second place at 24%, Biden in first place 31%, Warren at 15%, Harris at 10%, a strong poll for Andrew Yang at 4%, Buttigieg at 3%, as well as Booker, Gabbard at 3% as well, and Beto O'Rourke at 2 percentage points. And what's really interesting here is when we take a look at how the demographics play out, there continues to be really strong support with Sanders getting 36% under the age of 15, weak amongst older Democratic voters where he's at 11% with those that are 50 years or older. And part of the reason why Andrew Yang did pretty well in this particular poll at 4% is he did very well amongst those younger age demographic of voters, and that's where he's going to get the bulk, more than likely, of his support from, given his presence in the online community, and that's where he's been able to have a lot of outreach and more success than maybe some of these other more established Democratic candidates. Also, good news for the Democrats in general for their at least their top 2 candidates in their head-to-head against Donald Trump. We see Biden with an 8-point lead, Bernie Sanders with a 4-point lead. Then we see Warren with a slightly stronger 50% of support in contrast to Trump. Harris not quite as strong 50-50 in comparison to Warren, but pretty similar here, each of them at 50% of support, and Buttigieg losing to Trump by 2 percentage points. And now I want to wrap things up taking a look at an Echelon Insight poll, and we can see the difference in the change from where things were in July. Biden receding by 3 points, but still in first place at 30% overall support, followed by Bernie Sanders, who gains 5 points since July, up to 19%. Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris both at 11 percentage points. Beto O'Rourke and Cory Booker each at 4%, followed by Pete Buttigieg at 3 points. And we take a look at the candidates that are being considered, and Joe Biden at 58% of Democratic primary voters are at least considering voting for him. Bernie Sanders doing quite well in this one compared to July, up 9 percentage points, up to 48%, those that are considering voting for him. Then we have Elizabeth Warren there at 43 and Kamala Harris at 37. And then we get quite a big step down from that point. And I want to wrap things up taking a look at how some of these demographics are playing out in this Echelon Insight poll that we're getting here. So all Democratic voters, we saw those numbers earlier. Those white Democrats without a bachelor's degree, this is where Bernie Sanders tends to do better. The white working class voters, those that don't have a college degree, those that are in the lower middle class and lower class, and we see he slightly edges out Joe Biden in the support amongst this group. And that's why I personally think that Bernie Sanders would be a really tough opponent head-to-head against Donald Trump, because those white working class voters that Trump was able to flip over to his side in the Midwest, in the Rust Belt, which is a very important region of the country, I think Bernie could potentially have success in pulling back those voters into the fold for the Democratic Party. And we tend to see that in a lot of the polls where Sanders does quite well in his head-to-head matchup against Trump in those key Midwestern states. But also Joe Biden there, very similar to Sanders. He's at 26% with these voters, Warren at 13%. And then we see the white Democrats with a bachelor's degree. This is where Biden tends to do a bit better. Those higher earning income Democrats tend to support Biden. He's there at 27%, followed by Warren at 19% and Sanders at 16%. And then African-American Democrats, another very strong category for Biden given his ties to President Barack Obama. He's there at 36%, Kamala Harris at 21%, Bernie Sanders at 15%. And this is where Elizabeth Warren needs to do better if she's going to go on and win the nomination. African-American voters in the Democratic primary process are an extremely important demographic, and she tends to do really poorly amongst these voters in these primary polls. We see Warren down here at just 1% of support amongst African-American demographics, one that she has to do a lot better with, again, if she is going to continue to build on the momentum that she has picked up in recent months. So that's going to wrap up this video, guys. I appreciate you stopping on in. Consider subscribing for more. And again, if you want to look at all of these polls for yourself and all the contents within them, I'll have links posted down in the video description. So I hope to see you guys back here for my next video.